Well, last week I talked specifically about the books that changed how my business thought, how I thought about my business, what I did with my business, stuff like that. You'll find a link to that up above. um, this week I'm going to talk about again the books that changed how I thought, what I did, and a lot of we have to think about how I maneuver through life. But not from a business perspective. These are new ones that are outside of business, that are just more in general life than specifically business. So buckle up. First book I want to talk about is this one here. This is How to Read a Book by Mortimer J. Adler and Charles Van Doren. This was an old book, I think. To look. So this is my first physical copy to hold before I had a digital copy. I just bought this actually to do this video because I knew I was going to talk about it. So it was originally written in 1940. It was renewed in 1967, and this version here is 1972, which includes Charles Van Doren. I'm not sure what copy I've read first, but I will read this again. And this book here was like super foundational in just changing how I read books. How I read books. I read this when I was about 34, 35, and shortly after that, I encountered an older gentleman, a former president of the college I went to. We were at a board event, and we were talking about books, and he said, "Oh, you read a lot, like recommend a book to me." And I said, "No, I will only recommend 2 books." And he laughed and said, "Okay, well, what 2 books?" And I said, "The first one is this book here, How to Read a Book by Mortimer J. Adler." And he laughed and said, "Oh, I know. I read that book too. He read that book when he was 50." And he's like, and I felt like everything he had read before it didn't count because he just didn't read it well enough. He didn't give it the attention it deserved when it deserved it, or didn't, I guess, skim through the parts that he should have skimmed through. And that's what this book helps you do. I felt the same way. And he congratulated me, when I was 35 for like, "Oh, I'm glad you picked that up when you were 35 instead of 50 like me, because you have so many more years. I have 20 more years, 15 more years to read." So this one here is almost always, I say, read the book, skim through, read the book, pick up the main points, because it's going to change how you read books. Again, a college friend of mine, he asked a few years back now, when he was just entering college, like, "What book should I read?" And I said, "If you're going to read one book this summer, read How to Read a Book by Mortimer J. Adler. You're going to read a lot of stuff. He's training to be a lawyer. And that's just going to help you read everything from a smarter perspective and think about it more so that you can get more out of everything you read." And he admits he didn't read the whole thing, but he got through a bunch of it. And he's like, it just changed how he read books so that he could get more out of them. That's number 1, How to Read a Book by Mortimer J. Adler. And the 1972 version is what I have, with Charles Van Doren. So next up is Invisible Women. I don't actually have my copy right now. It's lent out to the administrative assistant at my child's school. And this book is about how women are invisible in much of life, how we don't consider them, even though they are, sometimes or often the main constituents of things. It's everything from transit. So transit is often hub and spoke, where the spokes are like the outlying suburbs, where everyone dwells. But and women and all of the transit, the commuting is built for hub and spoke. So it goes into the commuting area, into the main work areas, into where men work. And women need to go travel around the spokes instead. So they have to go into the hub and back out, and into the hub and back out, and it just devalues their time. So from that to everything like size of doorknobs, like the height of things, like it's all built for men. The average room temperature was, decided upon set in like the 70s when men wore suits to work, and men are usually warmer. Like there's a measurable productivity decline in women when you set it to 72. It should be more like, 75 or something like that, I believe it said for women. So it made me think and just look around at a lot of things that I see happening and like wondering, like, did a woman get asked to this? Did like anybody except a white dude get asked, right? Transit. You want to increase women's transit? Another thing to do is like locate the bus stops in well-lit areas where there are other people, not just well-lit even, where there are other people. So my local city has them like behind a shopping mall, kind of in the dark, and there's nothing back there except that and an old newspaper office that doesn't exist anymore. Like the newspapers exist, they moved, and that they're just gating off. I noticed today as I walked by it. That is not like a safe spot. It's like you find homeless people camped underneath that the old newspaper stuff. That's why they're gating it off. So looking at that and realizing that like really that should be located like around, maybe there's another side street that's like much more in traffic area. It's between 2 main streets, a lot more in traffic area that we could maybe locate this at, move it to, and we would see, or we'd increase safety. And there's actually a bus stop right around the corner there. Anyways, like they could really move this over and have a better, safer user environment for their users, specifically for their female users. So So bathrooms, right? Another thing, I think about this all the time with bathrooms now. Bathrooms are like, hey, we give, 50 square, it's not 50 square feet because that's really small, but, we give 200 square feet to men, 200 square feet to women. We're good. But women take longer. Women are more likely to have children with them. Like all these things that mean like we should be going for throughput, right? So in a given 10-minute time, 10 men can get through, 10 women can get through. Well, women will actually get 20% more space then. And that's what they should get. So it really changed how I thought about all of that stuff. And it's a great book. Like if I told my friend, if I need this book back, if I really want to reference it, and I'm getting close a couple times, I will just buy myself a second copy of it. And they consider the other one a gift because it's a great book that I keep coming back to and keep thinking about just as I'm walking around. Like, I wonder if women were consulted in this. Who are the main user groups? Are they men or women? What's their ethnicity? Like, and all in there. So yeah, if you want to like really up your game, what you think about women, what you think about in the design of things, then Invisible Women is an excellent book, recommended highly. So another book that was important recently with me is Scarcity, Why Having Too Little. Yeah, that's right. Why Having Too Little Means So Much. By Sandhill and Eldar. Can't say the last names, so we're just going to skip them. It's this book here. And this book talked a lot about just any type of scarcity. So if you follow my emails as I record this, it's the 6th of March, and I sent out an email this morning saying that my family's in scarcity right now due to external circumstances with some work things, realizing we've talked last night, we overspent by $1,200 this month. Because when you're in scarcity, emotional scarcity, any type of scarcity, you can't put the extra effort into thinking of something like, what's really our budget? What should we really spend? Yeah, and I keep coming back to this and looking at it being like, how can we take even out of this, and Atomic Habits came into this a little bit. How can we take a decision that you have to make all the time? So not spending to one that you just make once, right? So envelope system for your finances, right? Here's the money for groceries. When it's out, it's out. Like I don't have to look at the bank and start doing like mental math to figure out how much should be in each account or anything like that. I can just say, it's all done. And I continue to come back to this as I'm dealing with stuff. I'm thinking, or as I'm dealing with my kids, when I'm dealing with anything, like, are they in any type of scarcity? Can they actually make a decision? Are they what are they feeling, and how can I take their feelings for this into account so that I can help them make better decisions and help and understand where they're coming from, even if they're making bad decisions that I don't agree with. Because I think that even understanding someone, where they're coming from, what they're dealing with, all that is important, right? So let's take my dad, for instance. My dad grew up in an alcoholic family. My grandpa was not like this when I grew up, but he had an alcoholic family. I remember years and years ago, he said, hey, I'm really sorry for, A, B, and C as a bad dad. And I was like, Dad, you didn't beat me. You didn't drink a lot, right, until I was in my 20s. And he's, having a beer here and there. And he was an alcoholic in his teens as well. So like any mistake you made, you broke that whole cycle of alcoholism. So, hey, we're good. Yes, you had problems, but you had like no model for being a good parent. So while we may say there was issues and things that I hope to do better, although I'll have my own, myriad of things that I don't do well. I continue to remember that my dad did not drink. He did not beat us. He was not an alcoholic. So looking at that, and I view any of his mistakes in those lights as well, that he made a lot of choices and he did a lot of things that just made us better, right? He stopped drinking for 30 years, I think. 20 years. No, almost 30 years. And he stopped that because he saw himself and knew that he'd have kids one day and that he needed to break that cycle. So knowing that is good. And just looking at scarcity has helped me just decide or realize that like I am in scarcity right now and I need to put other processes in place to make sure I don't overspend, I don't make bad decisions, so that because I'll be so much more prone, I can't even think of good options when you're in scarcity. So again, Scarcity by Sandhill and Eldar Shafir. Eldar Shafir, I can say his last name, but Sandhill, no, I really can't say it. He always referred to as Sandhill in the book as well. Great book, recommended. I did a review, it'll be linked up above. So next up, Quiet by Susan Cain. This is a book about introverts and a book about how introverts have to deal with the extrovert ideal. Like anything you hear is, oh, you gotta get out there. You gotta do all these things. And introverts look at it and go, that just feels like soul sucking. And I am fairly firmly an introvert. I, at the very least, like big groups of people. I don't enjoy. I've never enjoyed it. I left my own 16th birthday because my friends threw a big party and I walked in and looked around and said, you don't know me. If my wife invited over a couple of my friends, 2 families or something, and said, hey, we're having a party, surprise. Like, that's totally different than, hey, there's like 50 people here. Don't want 50 people. I'd rather have, 2 couples or something. And that fills me up. The 50 people does not fill me up. So this is a really good one to look at, again, what the extrovert ideal is, how it impacts our lives, and what are the strengths of introverts? What are the strengths of people who can, like, you want somebody to sit all day and read? I can do that. It doesn't bother me at all. I don't need to go out and see a lot of people, right? Going out to Starbucks. Today I walked to Starbucks. I walked to the library. I happened to see my wife in the grocery store and then walked home after buying a different book that I've been waiting for at the Bookman. So doing that, well, like, I feel full. That was plenty of interaction for me today. Happy to stay home. I don't need a lot of other stuff. So doing that, and just, I always felt bad about not going to conferences, because everyone says, you have to go to conferences, Curtis. They're so important. Like, if you don't go to conferences, like, this is where I hate them. I hate them with the fire of a thousand suns, to quote which movie. If you can tell me what movie, and I will send you a book out of this list if you can tell me what movie. First person to reply in the comments to tell me what movie that comes out of, then I will send you one of the books. Send you one of the books. We'll figure out exactly how, whether it's digital, physical, or whatever, depending on exactly where you are and what the cost is in that area. But I will send one free book if you can tell me what that quote is from. Or something like, hate them with the fire of a thousand suns. Tell me. Anyway, where was I? Like, I hate those conferences, and I feel drained after them. But I always say, oh, I have to go, and I book myself for one, and then I get closer, and I just, like, I hate them, I loathe them. So I just give myself a break. I don't worry about it. I'll go to something that's really convenient, that's close, that I can, like, walk to. And I live in Chilliwack. There's not much here. So that eliminates tons of stuff. And yeah, and just knowing that and feeling okay with it, and that I don't have to worry about it, and I can make connections with people in other ways. I can make connections online. There's other things that I can do, or make connections with just the people that I really love one-on-one, and not worry about all the other connections that everyone says I should make at conferences. So, Quiet, Susan Cain, great book. Next up, All In by Josh Levs. I don't own a copy of this book physically. I have read this on Kindle. I read this a few years ago. And All In by Josh Levs is basically about how we made some strides in, like, including women in the workplace, but we've made, like, almost nothing in including men back in the home life. So I regularly, oh, you're babysitting the kids. They're my children. I'm not babysitting. You don't babysit your children. I am parenting my children just as my wife would. Or when I have them out at the park and people are like, oh, it's so good to see a dad. And like, no mom gets this. Or like, why don't we see change tables in every men's bathroom? Like, I think the worst is when I've gone to a kid's store and I go into the men's bathroom, no change table there. What am I supposed to do? Now, I don't have to change kids anymore, so it's not as big a deal to me, but I still feel it. Like, when I go into a men's change room and see there's no change table, and the change table isn't only in the ladies, now a family bathroom, cool, like it. But if there's no change surface in the men's bathroom, it's just, seriously, come on, get with it. And reading that and having some of my own experiences, right? Like years ago, with our first kid, after a year, we'd had her for a year. My wife was back at work. I worked from home. I walked down to pick her up at the end of daycare. I had her, hung out with her for a couple hours. So my wife came home. I did dinner, helped my wife usually put her to bed. And then, like, I helped get her ready in the morning, did all this stuff. All Saturday my wife worked. I was there. Sunday my wife would be home. We still hung out. And then during the week, my wife would have one day off, and she'd keep my daughter home, and I'd see them then. Like, I was really the majority caregiver. I'm that again, actually. My wife works every night after school, so she goes off to work, and I watch two children. Two, because my one daughter goes with my wife most times to go figure skating. So I am the majority caregiver, and yet people are like, oh, Dad, are you sure? I'm really sure I can handle this. I do this every day. I clean the house. I do the laundry. I do most of the cooking. I get the kids ready. I make sure that I organize birthdays. I organize play dates, stuff like that. And All In is a good, sometimes frustrating book about all of that. Talks about, like, again, the author. He'll, try to organize a play date for his kid, and they're like, oh, okay, well, will your wife be there? And they say, no, oh, well, no, we can't do that then. As if men are just suddenly abusers. I'm lucky. We've never had that. I said, I just want to be clear. Like, it's just me. My wife Cynthia's out, and everyone's like, okay, cool. Like, no one's cared. And I generally don't. I don't care at all. We have male babysitters for my 3 daughters, which people are like, that's weird, but we, employ a male babysitter. Actually, the family, they have a boy and a girl, about within a year or two of each other, and we just call them and say, like, who can come over, and someone shows up. Like, it's great. And it's great to have that. And he says, like, it's really hard to get babysitting jobs. And you're like, oh, you're great. Like, we really like him. We would recommend him to watch other kids. He's great. But knowing that, like, men are, the advice even kids get when they say, hey, if you're lost in the park, go find a woman. And you're like, okay, well, What about like find a parent with kids, man or woman? Like that's probably a better one. And that we need to make more strides in accepting men as the main caregiver, not immediately villainizing them for anything. Um, and just understanding that men are like they're dads, they need to be in there, and we need to accommodate that. We need to, if you take, book talks a lot about it, if you take time off from work as a man when you have a baby, when your wife has a baby, your spouse has a partner has a baby, then your career stalls out. They're like, oh, you're allowed it. But if you take more than like a day, like, oh boy, like that is not okay. You need to be there, right? Like if you're taking, oh, my kid's sick, I got to go. My wife took the last day off. This is my turn. Like that is not okay. It's okay for a woman, but it's not okay for a man. Your career will suddenly stall out. You'll suddenly like have bad performance reviews, even though you hit the same numbers. But you'll get bad performance reviews because your career stalls out, because that is quote unquote women's work. So we need to make strides in that. So it was a good book and a little frustrating. And I work for myself, so there's a lot of stuff I don't have to deal with. But as I said, like I'm the main caregiver, I'm the person on pack, I'm the person over at the school all the time. The teachers joke like, "Do you work here?" Because I'm just like in and out all the time, right? Walk by and find a whole bunch of kids' clothes on the ground because they've just got left outside of recess. Sweaters, coats, stuff like that. I'm the guy who takes them all in. I volunteer for the sports teams. I volunteer for I make cookies for the bake sale. I'm on the pack. I show up to help with the library, stuff like that. My wife, just because she can't, because she works after school, so she can't do any of these things. And yet still, it's a surprise. And everyone's like so amazed that there's me there, and that and women just don't get that. Of course, it's just your job, so we discount it. So it's a good book. Made me change how I think about it. Frustrated me a little bit, being how much more progress needs to get made on that front for men. And again, we still absolutely do need to make progress for women in getting into the workplace and having equality, like proper equality, not just like token equality, which is kind of what we have right now. The final book I want to talk about today is Dip by Seth Godin, and specifically for 3 questions, which I'm going to reference my notes, or otherwise I won't get them exactly. But question 1 is, am I panicking? These are the questions you ask when you're facing failure, when you're not moving forward as fast as you think you should be, stuff like that. And so the first one is, am I panicking? So if you're faced with a bad client, you're faced with a bad scenario, stuff like that, am I just panicking? Don't make the decision right away. Take a deep breath, take 48 hours and think about it, and then make the decision when it's not immediately emotionally destructive or threatening to you. And that's number 1. Number 2 is, who am I trying to influence? And there's a good quote in the book, which I'll read to you. It says, sure, some of the people in a market have considered you and even rejected you, but most of the people in the market have never even heard of you. The market doesn't have just one mind. Different people in the market are seeking different things. So this always comes up when you're, 10 people already talk about books, but people are going to listen to me talk about books or listen to my advice because I do it differently, right? I've had comments, oh, I love when your kids come in, and I don't always love it because it's annoying because I'm trying to do stuff. But when they say I'm a working dad too, and I love to see that your kids come in and they buck you a little bit and you're still working through it and you're trying to, improve in all these ways. So that's something I can do that a woman can't do. The books I talk about are very different than a lot of books that people talk about, right? I talk about a lot of nonfiction, very, very little long fiction stuff. I read a little bit of young adult with my daughter, but not a lot. I talk about old hard science fiction, right? Isaac Asimov, stuff like that. Like The Foundation, which is right here. That's why I mentioned it on my bookshelf below that you can't see. So knowing that there's a different market out there, and again, and his further question is, have I reached them? What else do I need to do to reach these people? Because in the midst of something that's not going as well as you hope, you probably haven't reached as many people as you thought. Most of the industry has never heard of you. Number 3, what sort of measurable progress am I making? So this is easy to say as I put up videos measurable progress recently, got monetized. I made $10 in 5 days. Great. Or seeing your subscribers go up, seeing your views go up, looking at your popular videos, those are all measures of progress that you can make. And yes, it's slow, right? $10 is not a lot for 5 days for all the work I put into videos, but it is measurable progress towards my goal. And that means that I need to hinge on that. Okay, I got 2 more clients. I made a little bit more this month. Those are all things that say, yes, I'm going in the right direction. If I stagnate out for a while, and I did. So I used to do more coaching. I used to do coaching. Actually, I shut it all down because it was stagnating. It wasn't making any progress. I wasn't not finding time. I was not choosing to use my time appropriately to market it because I guess I wasn't interested in it as much anymore. I have good programming clients. I'm enjoying doing this video stuff and talking about books, talking about other technical stuff on video. And so I focused back down to that because that seems to be making progress where coaching wasn't. And being okay with that, being okay with not needing to make progress on those things and being okay with it. So that's the three questions out of the dip that I ask myself continually as I assess ideas. Like, where are they? Am I rocketing? We don't want to say, hey, if I had 1% of the market, but it's likely that not even 1% knows about you, and right. But knowing that I can, as long as I'm seeing progress, if I am not panicking, and I'm not just making a snap decision based on one bad day, I'm not panicking. I'm letting the market know I am continuing to make forward progress. Then it's something I would keep. If it's not seeing these things, I shut down coaching because it wasn't seeing these things. I wasn't getting more people sign up. I wasn't getting any more inquiries about it anymore. I wasn't making progress on it, so I just shut it down. And while it can seem like a failure, okay, so but now I can devote my time to other things. That's it. Those are the books that changed how I think about my life, really. A little bit about business in the end there, but really about how I think about my life. And have helped me, I continually refer to in my mind, in other reading I do. Just so those are important books that I think you should read as well. And as I said earlier, if you can name the quote that movie comes from, first one below, I will figure out how to send you a copy of one of the books on the list today. Have a good one.